On what should have been the happiest day of his life, Daniel Kensington was left humiliated, abandoned at the altar by his glamorous fiancée. Seeking refuge from the scandal, he escapes to a quiet inn in a town he's never heard of. There, a chance encounter with Serena James, a kind and grounded innkeeper, begins to rewrite his story. But when his past collides with his newfound peace, will love prove stronger than the life he left behind? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The grand ballroom of the Kensington Plaza Hotel gleamed with thousands of white roses and crystal chandeliers. Nearly 300 guests chatted excitedly, all dressed in their finest attire. At the front of the room, Daniel Kensington shifted uncomfortably in his custom-tailored tuxedo. At 35, he was one of New York's most eligible bachelors, or at least he had been until today. "Stop fidgeting," whispered his best friend and best man Marcus. "You look like you're about to jump out of your skin." "I'm fine," Daniel muttered, though his clenched jaw suggested otherwise. He checked his Rolex for the 4th time in 2 minutes. The ceremony should have started 15 minutes ago. Daniel Kensington was not a man accustomed to waiting. As CEO of Kensington Developments, he commanded boardrooms and closed multi-million-dollar deals before lunch. His time was valuable, and everyone knew it. Everyone except apparently his bride. His mother approached, her face tight with worry beneath her perfectly styled silver hair. "Daniel, darling, have you heard anything from Victoria? Her bridesmaids say she's not answering her phone." Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. A text message from Victoria. "I can't do this, I'm sorry." The room spun. Daniel read the message again, certain he had misunderstood. But the words remained unchanged on the screen. "Daniel?" His mother touched his arm. "What is it?" He couldn't speak. Instead, he handed her the phone. Her sharp intake of breath told him she understood immediately. "Marcus," she said, her voice suddenly businesslike. "We need to make an announcement." The next hour passed in a blur. Marcus stood at the microphone, explaining to shocked guests that the wedding would not be taking place. Daniel's father, Robert Kensington, quickly took control, ushering people toward the exits while waitstaff hurriedly packed away champagne flutes and untouched appetizers. Daniel stood frozen in place until the room emptied. Only then did he allow himself to collapse into a nearby chair. "Son," his father said, placing a heavy hand on his shoulder, "this isn't the end of the world." "She didn't even have the decency to tell me to my face," Daniel replied, his voice hollow. "Victoria always was more style than substance," his mother said sharply. "Perhaps this is a blessing in disguise." But Daniel wasn't listening. His phone buzzed again, Victoria calling. He silenced it and slipped it back into his pocket. "I need to get out of here," he said suddenly, standing up. I can't be here right now." "So of course," his father agreed. "The penthouse is ready for you. Your mother and I will handle everything here." Daniel shook his head. "No, not the penthouse. Not anywhere she might find me." "Where will you go?" his mother asked, concerned. "I don't know yet, but I'll be in touch." He loosened his bow tie and headed for the exit, ignoring the pitying looks from the hotel staff. 3 hours later, Daniel found himself driving north on the interstate, his tuxedo jacket discarded in the back seat of his silver Mercedes. He had no destination in mind, just away from New York, away from the office where everyone would be whispering about him, away from the penthouse apartment where Victoria had left half her things. Rain began to fall as dusk settled, making the highway treacherous. His eyes burned with exhaustion, and he realized he'd been driving for hours without stopping. A small green sign appeared. "Millfield, next exit." He had never heard of Millfield, which made it perfect. No one would think to look for him in a town he had no connection to. The exit led to a narrow road winding through dense trees. The rain fell harder, and Daniel peered through the windshield, searching for any sign of civilization. Finally, a warm glow appeared through the downpour, a building with a small illuminated sign. Willow Creek Inn. It wasn't the kind of place he would normally stay, far from the luxury hotels he was accustomed to, but tonight that was exactly what he wanted. Anonymity, simplicity. He parked and dashed through the rain to the front door. A bell jingled as he entered, shaking water from his hair. "My goodness, you're soaked through," came a warm female voice. Daniel looked up to see a woman behind a small wooden check-in counter. She appeared to be around 30, with kind brown eyes and chestnut hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore a soft blue sweater and had a genuine smile that immediately made the room feel warmer. "Sorry," he said, realizing he was dripping on the polished wooden floor. "I got caught in the downpour." "Don't apologize for the rain," she said, coming around the counter with a towel. "Here, dry off a bit." "Thank you," he said, taking the towel. "Do you have any rooms available?" "You're in luck. We have one room left, our best one actually, the Willow Suite." She returned to the counter and opened an old-fashioned registration book. "Will you be staying just the night?" Daniel paused. He hadn't thought beyond escaping New York. "I'm not sure yet. Is it possible to book it for a week?" Her eyebrows rose slightly in surprise. "Of course. We'll be happy to have you." She slid the registration book toward him. "I just need your name and a credit card." For a split second, Daniel hesitated. The Kensington name would be all over the society pages tomorrow. He didn't want to see the pity in her eyes when she recognized him. "Daniel," he said, writing only his first name in the book. He handed her his credit card, hoping she wouldn't notice his last name. If she recognized it, she didn't show it. She simply processed the payment and handed him an actual key. Not a key card, but an old-fashioned brass key with a wooden tag labeled Willow Suite. "I'm Serena," she said. "Serena James. I own the inn. If you need anything at all, just let me know. Breakfast is served from 7 to 10 in the morning room just through there." She pointed to an archway leading to what looked like a comfortable dining area. "Thank you, Serena," he replied, surprising himself by using her first name. In business, he was always formal, always Mr. Kensington, but something about this place, about her, made formality seem unnecessary. "Let me show you to your room," she offered, grabbing an umbrella from a stand by the door. "It's just across the garden." They hurried through the rain to a separate building behind the main house. Serena unlocked the door to reveal a spacious suite with a four-poster bed, a small sitting area with a fireplace and windows that would likely offer a view of the garden in daylight. "This is lovely," Daniel said, genuinely impressed by the simple elegance of the room. "Thank you. It was my grandmother's apartment before she passed. I renovated it last year." Serena moved to the fireplace and skillfully arranged kindling and logs. "Let me get this started for you. It'll help with the dampness." Daniel watched as she lit the fire, noticing the careful way she arranged the logs and the quiet efficiency of her movements. There was something soothing about her presence. "There," she said, standing up as the fire caught. "That should make things cozier. The bathroom's through that door, plenty of hot water, so feel free to take a long shower. And there's extra blankets in the chest at the foot of the bed." "Thank you," Daniel said. "This is exactly what I needed tonight." Serena tilted her head slightly, studying him. "You look like you've had a rough day. Can I bring you some tea? Or maybe something stronger?" Daniel was about to decline automatically. He was used to handling things alone, but stopped himself. "Actually, something stronger would be great if it's not too much trouble." "No trouble at all. I'll be right back." When she returned a few minutes later, she carried a tray with a bottle of whiskey, 2 glasses, and a plate of homemade cookies. "I thought you might be hungry," she explained, setting the tray down on the coffee table. "You didn't have to join me," Daniel said, though he was secretly relieved not to be alone with his thoughts. "It's a house rule," Serena replied with a smile. "Never let a guest drink alone on a rainy night." She poured 2 fingers of whiskey into each glass and handed one to him. "To new beginnings," she said, raising her glass. The toast caught him off guard. Was it that obvious that he was running from something? "To new beginnings," he echoed, taking a sip. The whiskey was good, smooth and warming. Serena sat in the armchair opposite him, her posture relaxed but not overly familiar. "So, Daniel, what brings you to Millfield? We don't get many visitors this time of year." He considered lying, but found he didn't have the energy. "I needed to get away. Today was not what I expected it to be." She nodded, not pressing for details. "Sometimes the unexpected turns in life lead us exactly where we need to be." "Is that what happened to you?" he asked, curious despite himself. Is running an inn what you always wanted to do? Serena laughed softly. Not at all. I was a corporate event planner in Boston for 6 years. Burnout City. When my grandmother died and left me this place, I came to sell it. But then, you fell in love with it, Daniel finished for her. I did. It was like the place had a soul, you know. It needed someone to care for it. She sipped her whiskey. My ex-fiancé thought I was having a nervous breakdown when I decided to stay. He gave me an ultimatum. Come back to Boston or we were done. And yet, here you are, Daniel observed. Here I am, she agreed with a slight smile. Best decision I ever made, even if I didn't recognize it at the time. They fell into easy conversation as the fire crackled and the rain pattered against the windows. Serena told him about the inn, about the small town of Millfield, about her journey from stressed-out city planner to innkeeper. She didn't ask about his life, for which he was grateful. After an hour, she glanced at her watch. I should let you rest. You've clearly had a long day. Thank you, Daniel said, walking her to the door. Not just for the room, but for this, the conversation. It helped. Sometimes talking to a stranger is easier than talking to someone who knows all your history, she replied with understanding. Sleep well, Daniel. Things often look clearer in the morning. After she left, Daniel took a long, hot shower, letting the water wash away the remnants of what should have been his wedding day. As he climbed into the surprisingly comfortable bed, he realized he hadn't checked his phone in hours. There were 23 missed calls, from his parents, from Marcus, from business associates, and yes, from Victoria. There were dozens of text messages and emails. News traveled fast in their circle. He turned the phone off and placed it in the drawer of the bedside table. Whatever crisis awaited him in New York could wait. For now, for tonight at least, he would follow Serena's wisdom and see if things looked clearer in the morning. Daniel woke to sunlight streaming through the windows. For a moment he was disoriented, unsure where he was. Then the events of the previous day came flooding back. The wedding that wasn't, his drive north, the Willow Creek Inn. Surprisingly, the crushing weight of humiliation he'd felt yesterday had lightened somewhat. It was still there but dulled, as if the distance from New York had created a buffer between him and the pain. The smell of coffee and something sweet baking drew him from bed. He showered and dressed in the clothes he'd worn yesterday, the only ones he had with him. He'd need to find a store and buy some basics if he was staying for the week. In the breakfast room, several tables were occupied by other guests, but Daniel spotted Serena immediately. She moved between tables with coffee, chatting easily with everyone. She noticed him in the doorway and smiled, gesturing to a small table by the window. Good morning, she said as he sat down. How did you sleep? Better than I expected, he admitted. This place has a certain peace to it. That's the nicest compliment the inn could receive, she replied, pouring him a cup of coffee. Hungry? Starving, actually. Excellent. We have blueberry pancakes today, my grandmother's recipe, and bacon, of course. That sounds perfect. As she walked away to place his order, Daniel took in the breakfast room. It was cozy without being cramped, with windows overlooking the garden he hadn't been able to see in last night's rain. The other guests were a mix of couples and families, all looking relaxed and content. His phone remained off in his room, and he felt no urgency to check it. For the first time in years, no one expected anything from him. No meetings, no conference calls, no social obligations. The freedom was both terrifying and exhilarating. Serena returned with a plate piled high with pancakes and crispy bacon. Enjoy, she said, and when you're done, I thought, you might want these. She set down a small stack of local maps and brochures. There's more to Millfield than meets the eye. The hiking trails up at Crescent Lake are beautiful this time of year. Thank you, Daniel said, touched by her thoughtfulness. Though I just realized I don't have any clothes with me other than what I'm wearing. Is there somewhere in town I can buy some basics? Miller's General Store on Main Street has everything you'd need. Nothing fancy, but good quality. She hesitated, then added, if you don't mind me asking, did you leave in a hurry? Daniel's fork paused halfway to his mouth. You could say that. Serena nodded, not pushing further. Well, if you need anything washed, We have laundry facilities for guests, just let me know. Throughout breakfast, Daniel caught himself watching Serena as she moved around the room. There was something captivating about her easy confidence, the genuine way she interacted with everyone. She seemed completely comfortable in her own skin, something he realized he had never been, despite all his success. After breakfast, Daniel took one of Serena's maps and walked into town. Millfield was exactly the kind of small town he would normally drive through without a second glance. A main street lined with locally owned shops, a small park with a gazebo, a library housed in a beautiful old Victorian building. At Miller's general store, he bought jeans, t-shirts, a couple of sweaters, and other necessities. The older man behind the counter, who introduced himself as Henry Miller, was clearly curious about the stranger in town, but didn't pry. "You staying at Serena's place?" Henry asked as he rang up Daniel's purchases. "Yes, at the Willow Creek Inn. She's done wonders with that old place. Her grandmother would be proud." Henry bagged the clothes. "You planning to hike while you're here? We've got some good trails." "Maybe," Daniel replied. "I haven't really planned anything, just taking it a day at a time." Henry nodded approvingly. "Best way to visit a place like Millfield. Let the town reveal itself to you." With his new clothes in hand, Daniel spent the rest of the morning exploring the town. He had lunch at a small diner called Maggie's, where the waitress, Maggie herself he assumed, treated him like a regular after learning he was staying at Serena's inn. "That girl saved this town, you know," Maggie said as she refilled his coffee. When the old mill closed, tourism dried up, but Serena came in and fixed up that inn, started promoting the area. "Now we get visitors year-round. Not like your fancy resorts, but enough to keep us going." "She seems special," Daniel agreed, surprising himself with the admission. "That she is. Been through her share of heartache too, but never lets it dim. Her light." Maggie gave him an appraising look. "You look like you could use a little of what she's got." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" "Perspective," Maggie replied simply. "The ability to see past what went wrong to what could still go right." The conversation stayed with Daniel as he walked back to the inn that afternoon. By the time he reached the Willow Creek Inn, he had made a decision. He would stay the full week, turn off his phone, and try to find some of that perspective Maggie had mentioned. Serena was in the garden when he returned, pruning roses despite the autumn chill. She waved when she saw him. "Find everything you need in town?" she called. "I did, thanks." He held up the shopping bags. "The locals are very friendly." "Small town perk," she replied with a smile. "Everyone knows everyone's business, but they'll also give you the shirt off their back if you need it." "Maggie at the diner had quite a lot to say about you," Daniel said, joining her in the garden. Serena groaned good-naturedly. "I'm sure she did. Maggie's been here since the Stone Age, I think. Knows all the gossip. She said you saved the town." Blush colored Serena's cheeks. "She exaggerates. I just fixed up a building and made a website." "I doubt that's all you did," Daniel said, studying her. "People don't talk about you the way they do if that's all there was to it." Serena straightened up, brushing dirt from her hands. "Well, while you're getting the local gossip, I hope you're enjoying your stay so far." "I am. So much that I've decided to keep my phone off and actually take this week as a retreat, I guess." "Good for you," she said, sounding genuinely pleased. "Everyone needs to disconnect sometimes." "I was wondering," Daniel said, feeling oddly nervous, "if you might have some recommendations for dinner, somewhere quiet maybe. The Riverside Tavern has great food and a back patio that's usually empty this time of year." She hesitated, then added, "I usually go there on Thursdays. Owner's a friend of mine. I could show you the place if you'd like company." "I would," Daniel replied, surprised at how much he meant it. "I'd like that very much." As they stood in the garden, with fallen leaves swirling around their feet and the autumn sun casting a golden glow over everything, Daniel felt something he hadn't experienced in a very long time, a moment of pure contentment. No pressure, no expectations, no image to maintain. Maybe Millfield had more to offer than he'd thought. Maybe Serena did too, and maybe, just maybe, being left at the altar wasn't the end of his story, but the beginning of a new one. The Riverside Tavern was exactly the kind of place Daniel would have overlooked in his previous life. From the outside, it looked like any small-town bar: weathered wooden sign, string lights along the porch, pickup trucks in the gravel parking lot. But as Serena led him through the main dining room to the back patio, he was surprised by the charm of the place. The back patio overlooked the river that gave the tavern its name. String lights hung overhead, creating a warm glow against the darkening sky. A fire pit crackled in the corner, keeping the autumn chill at bay. "Jake!" Serena called, waving to a bearded man behind the bar. "Got room for two? For you?" "Always," the man replied with a warm smile. He eyed Daniel curiously, but didn't comment on Serena's unusual dinner companion. "Jake's the owner," Serena explained, as they settled at a table near the fire pit. "We went to high school together. He left for culinary school in New York, worked at some fancy restaurants, then came back here to open this place 5 years ago. Seems like a pattern in this town," Daniel observed. "People leaving and coming back. The ones who belong here always find their way back," Serena said with a smile. "The town has a way of calling its people home." Jake approached their table with 2 glasses of red wine. "On the house," he said, setting them down. "Serena's special. She only brings guests here when she really likes them." He winked at Daniel, ignoring Serena's embarrassed protest. "I bring all my guests here," she insisted. "Your food is the best in town." Sure, Jake teased. "That's why I haven't seen you in here with a guest in what, 6 months?" Daniel found himself enjoying the easy banter between them. In his world, friendships were often strategic alliances, relationships calculated for maximum benefit. The genuine affection between Serena and Jake was refreshing. After Jake took their orders and left, Serena shook her head with a smile. "Sorry about that. Small town. Everyone thinks they're a comedian." "I like it," Daniel admitted. "It's real." Serena studied him over her wine glass. "You're not from a small town, are you?" "No," he replied. "A New York born and raised." "I thought so. You have that city edge to you." She tilted her head. "What do you do there? Let me guess." "Lawyer?" Daniel smiled. "Close. Business. Real estate development." "Ah, hence the nice car and the designer. Watch that you're trying not to show off." He glanced down at his wrist, surprised. Most people noticed his Patek Philippe immediately. It was meant to be noticed after all. "I'm not trying to hide it. Maybe not consciously," she replied. "But you've been pulling your sleeve over it all day, like you don't want to be defined by it." Her observation unsettled him. Was he that transparent, or was she just unusually perceptive? "So what happened?" she asked gently. "What made a New York real estate developer run away to a town that isn't even on most maps?" Daniel took a long sip of his wine, debating how much to tell her. "I was supposed to get married yesterday." Serena's eyes widened. "Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have—" "No, it's okay," he interrupted. "She left me at the altar, literally. Sent a text message 15 minutes after the ceremony was supposed to start." "That's terrible," Serena said, genuine sympathy in her voice. "I'm so sorry, Daniel." "The funny thing is," he continued, surprising himself with his candor, "I'm not even sure I'm heartbroken. Humiliated, yes, angry, definitely, but heartbroken." He shook his head. "I think what hurts most is that I didn't see it coming. I'm good at reading people, it's part of my job, but I missed this completely. Sometimes we don't see what's right in front of us because we're too busy looking at what we think should be there," Serena said thoughtfully. Before Daniel could respond, Jake arrived with their food: perfectly grilled steaks, roasted vegetables, and crusty bread that smelled like heaven. "Told you he's good," Serena said as Jake walked away. The food was excellent, better than many high-end New York restaurants Daniel frequented. As they ate, the conversation shifted to lighter topics. Serena told him about growing up in Millfield, about her brief escape to Boston, and about her decision to transform her grandmother's failing bed and breakfast into the thriving inn it was now. "It wasn't easy," she admitted. "The place was practically falling apart. My savings were gone in 3 months. I had to take out loans, work night shifts at Maggie's while renovating during the day." "But you made it work," Daniel said, impressed by her determination. "I did. First guest checked in exactly 1 year after I took over, an older couple celebrating their 40th anniversary." Her face softened at the memory. "They've come back every year since. You love it, Daniel observed. The inn, this town, these people. I do, she agreed. It's not glamorous and the profit margins are tight, but it's mine. I built it. She smiled. Well, rebuilt it. Daniel thought about his own career. He had built an empire, yes, but what did he actually love about it? The thrill of the deal, certainly. The challenge of transforming properties. But the day-to-day business? The endless meetings and social obligations? Not so much. As they finished dinner, Serena suggested a walk along the riverfront. The night was clear and cool, the moon reflecting off the water. Thank you for this, Daniel said as they strolled along the path. For dinner, for the conversation, for not treating me like I might break. Is that what people usually do? She asked. My family, my friends, they mean well, but they're all walking on eggshells around me. Or they were before I left. He sighed. I should probably turn my phone back on, let them know I'm okay. Probably, she agreed, though I understand the appeal of staying disconnected. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, the only sound the gentle rush of the river beside them. Daniel found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't in years. Can I ask you something personal? He said finally. Sure. You mentioned an ex-fiancé yesterday. What happened there? If you don't mind talking about it. Serena was quiet for a moment. His name was David. We met in college, dated for 5 years. Before he proposed, he was safe, dependable. We had the same friends, the same goals, or so I thought. What changed? I did, she said simply. When my grandmother died and left me the inn, something clicked. I realized I'd been following a path that someone else had laid out. Good school, good job, good fiancé, but none of it was really mine, you know. It was what I thought I was supposed to want. Daniel nodded, her words resonating more than he cared to admit. David couldn't understand why I'd want to throw away our life in Boston to run a failing inn in the middle of nowhere. He thought it was grief making me crazy. She shrugged. Maybe it was a little, but it was also the first decision I'd ever made that was completely, wholly mine. And you don't regret it? Daniel asked. Not for a second, she replied without hesitation. It hasn't been easy, but it's been right. For me, anyway. They had reached a small dock that jutted out into the river. Serena led him to the end, where they sat on a wooden bench facing the water. What about you? She asked. Any regrets about your path? Daniel considered the question seriously. I've never really thought about it in those terms. The company was my father's and his father's, before him. Being a Kensington meant following in their footsteps. The moment the words left his mouth, he realized his slip. He glanced at Serena, but if she recognized his last name, she didn't show it. And you've been happy, she pressed. I've been successful, he replied automatically, then paused. That's not the same thing. Is it? Serena smiled softly. No, it's not. For the rest of the evening, they talked about everything and nothing. Favorite books, childhood memories, travel dreams. Daniel couldn't remember the last time he'd had a conversation that wasn't about business or social obligations. It was refreshing, like taking a deep breath after being underwater too long. When they finally walked back to the inn, the night had grown chilly. Daniel found himself wanting to extend their time together. Coffee, he suggested as they approached the main house. Or tea, if you prefer. I should probably finish some paperwork, Serena said reluctantly. I have a wedding party checking in tomorrow, not a big one, just a family gathering for a small ceremony at the lake. Of course, Daniel said, trying to hide his disappointment. Thank you again for dinner. I had a good time, she replied, and he could tell she meant it. If you're not busy tomorrow, the farmer's market in the town square is worth a visit. Best apple cider donuts you'll ever taste. I'll check it out, he promised. She hesitated, then leaned up and kissed his cheek lightly. Good night, Daniel. Sleep well. As he watched her walk into the main house, Daniel touched his cheek where her lips had been. For the first time since Victoria's text message, he felt something other than humiliation and anger. Something like hope. Back in his room, he finally turned on his phone. It immediately began buzzing with notifications. More missed calls, more text messages, more emails. He scrolled through them quickly. His parents were worried but understood his need for space. Marcus had handled the press, giving a vague statement about mutual decision to postpone the wedding. Victoria had called and texted repeatedly, her messages evolving from tearful apologies to angry demands to know where he was. The last message from her had come just 2 hours ago. "This is ridiculous, Daniel. You can't just disappear. We need to talk. I made a mistake." He typed a brief response to his parents, letting them know he was safe and would be out of touch for a few days. To Marcus, he sent thanks for handling the fallout. To Victoria, he sent nothing at all. Then he turned the phone off again and placed it back in the drawer. The morning dawned bright and crisp, a perfect autumn day. Daniel showered and dressed in his new casual clothes, jeans and a sweater that would have seemed foreign in his New York life, but felt right here in Millfield. At breakfast, Serena was busy with the arriving wedding party, a family of about 15 people, all talking excitedly about the weekend ceremony. She caught his eye across the room and smiled, but didn't have time to chat. Following her suggestion, Daniel walked into town for the farmers' market. The town square had been transformed overnight, with stalls selling everything from fresh produce to handmade crafts. Live music played from a small stage, and children ran between the booths, their laughter carrying on the breeze. He found the donut stand Serena had mentioned and bought one, still warm from the fryer and coated in cinnamon sugar. It was, as promised, the best he'd ever tasted. "First time at our market?" asked the woman who had sold him the donut. "First time in Millfield," Daniel replied. "Well, welcome. I'm Ellen, by the way. I run the bakery on Main Street." "Daniel," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "You staying at Serena's place?" she asked, shaking his hand. "Is it that obvious?" Ellen laughed. "Small town. News travels fast, especially when Serena brings a handsome stranger to Jake's for dinner." Daniel felt his cheeks warm. "We just had dinner." "Mm-hmm," Ellen said with a knowing smile. "Well, enjoy your stay, Daniel. And if you're smart, you'll get to know our Serena better. She's one of the good ones." As he continued through the market, several other vendors greeted him by name, all somehow knowing he was staying at the Willow Creek Inn. By the time he'd made a complete circuit, he'd been given free samples of local honey, homemade jam, and artisanal cheese, along with more knowing smiles and thinly veiled suggestions about Serena. It should have been intrusive, but Daniel found it oddly charming. These people genuinely cared about Serena, and by extension, anyone she chose to spend time with. When was the last time anyone had looked out for Victoria that way? Or for him, for that matter? Their friends were all socialites and business connections, relationships maintained for mutual benefit rather than genuine affection. With a bag full of local products, Daniel headed back to the inn. He found Serena in the garden, showing the wedding party the area where their ceremony would take place the following day. "The arbor will be set up here," she was explaining, gesturing to a space between two large maple trees ablaze with autumn colors. "And we'll have chairs arranged in a semicircle facing the lake." "It's perfect," said an older woman who appeared to be the mother of the bride. "Exactly what Emily wanted. Simple but beautiful." "That's our specialty," Serena replied with a smile. She noticed Daniel standing nearby and waved him over. "Meet our newest guest. Daniel, this is the Foster family. Emily and Michael are getting married here tomorrow." Daniel greeted the family, who welcomed him warmly and immediately invited him to attend the wedding. "The more the merrier," said Emily, a pretty blonde in her late 20s. "Serena's already coming. She's practically part of the family after all the help she's given us." "I wouldn't want to intrude," Daniel began, but Michael, the groom, insisted. "Not an intrusion at all. Any friend of Serena's is welcome." Serena caught his eye with a small smile. "These small-town weddings are nothing like your New York affairs, but they have their own charm." The casual reference to his home city reminded Daniel that he'd never told her he was from New York. She must have pieced it together from their conversations, he realized. After the Foster family dispersed to check into their rooms, Daniel approached Serena. "You've been busy today." "Small. Weddings are still weddings," she replied with a laugh. "Her 1,000 details to manage, but they're good people and it's a simple ceremony. Tomorrow will be lovely. They seem very fond of you, Daniel observed. The Fosters have been coming to the lake for years. Emily practically grew up spending summers here. When they were looking for a wedding venue, they wanted something meaningful to their family history. She smiled. That's the kind of business I love most, helping people create memories. You're good at it, he said sincerely. The way you connect with people, make them feel special. A slight blush colored her cheeks. Thank you. It's easy when you genuinely care. There it was again, that authenticity that drew him to her. Victoria had been expert at saying the right things, making the right gestures, but always with calculation behind it. Serena simply was. Did you enjoy the market? She asked, changing the subject. I did, though apparently everyone in town knows. I had dinner with you last night, Serena groaned. I'm sorry, small-town gossip mill works at lightning speed. Don't be sorry, he assured her. Everyone was very welcoming, almost protective of you, actually. They're good people, nosy but good. She checked her watch. I need to go over some final details with the caterer for tomorrow. But if you're free later, Jake's having a live music night at the tavern. Local band, nothing fancy, but they're actually pretty good. Sounds fun, Daniel replied, surprised to find he meant it. In New York, his idea of entertainment ran more toward exclusive clubs and private box seats at Lincoln Center, but the thought of a local band in a riverside tavern with Serena sounded far more appealing. Great. I'll knock on your door around. Hate, she suggested. I'll be ready. Daniel spent the afternoon exploring the trails around the lake, enjoying the solitude and the riot of autumn colors. He found a spot on a rocky outcropping with a view of the water and sat. For nearly an hour, just thinking. His life in New York seemed distant now, like something from another lifetime. Here, no one expected anything from him. He wasn't Daniel Kensington, CEO and heir to the Kensington fortune. He was just Daniel, a guy staying at the local inn. The simplicity was liberating. For the first time, he could see how much of his identity had been wrapped up in his family name, his position, his wealth. Strip all that away, and who was he? Really? He thought about Serena's story, how she had walked away from a safe life to follow her own path. It had taken courage, he realized, the kind of courage he wasn't sure he possessed. By the time he returned to the inn, the sun was setting. He showered and changed, choosing one of the sweaters he'd bought in town, casual but nice. At precisely 8 o'clock, there was a soft knock on his door. Serena stood there looking lovely in jeans, boots, and a soft green sweater that brought out the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. Her hair was down tonight, falling in soft waves. Around her shoulders. Ready for some small-town entertainment? She asked with a smile. Absolutely, he replied, grabbing his jacket. The tavern was packed when they arrived, the crowd a mix of locals and tourists. The band was setting up on a small stage in the corner, and the energy in the room was infectious. Jake waved them over to a reserved table near the stage. Perks of being the owner's friend, Serena explained as they sat down. The band, 4, locals who called themselves River Run, started their set with a cover of an old Tom Petty song. They were surprisingly good, with a sound that blended rock, country, and folk. Daniel found himself relaxing into the atmosphere, enjoying the music and the company. Serena seemed to know everyone, greeting people by name as they stopped by their table. But she never left Daniel's side for long, always returning with a smile that made him feel like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. During a break in the music, Jake joined them at the table. What do you think? He asked Daniel. Not exactly Broadway, but they've got heart. They're great, Daniel replied sincerely. This whole place is great. Jake and Serena exchanged a look. He's coming around, Jake said with a grin. Next thing, you know he'll be looking at real estate listings. Don't tease him, Serena scolded, but she was smiling too. The band started up again, this time with a slower song. Couples moved to the small dance floor, swaying to the music. Dance with me? Serena asked, holding out her hand. Daniel hesitated only briefly before taking it. I should warn you, I'm better at boardroom negotiations than dancing. It's not about skill, she replied, leading him to the dance floor. It's about feeling the music. He placed his hands on her waist as her arms went around his neck. They moved together slowly, finding a natural rhythm. Serena fit perfectly against him, as if they'd danced together 100 times before. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what? For showing me all this? For making me feel welcome?" He paused. "For seeing me. Not just the version of me I usually show the world." She looked up at him, her eyes serious. "The version of you that you show the world. Is that the real you?" The question caught him off guard. "I don't know," he admitted. "I've been playing that role for so long, sometimes it's hard to tell where it ends, and I begin." "Maybe that's why you're here," she suggested, "to figure that out." As the song ended, they remained close, neither wanting to break the connection. Daniel looked down at her, struck by a sudden, powerful urge to kiss her. Before he could act, on it, the band launched into an upbeat number, breaking the spell. Serena stepped back, a slight flush on her cheeks. "Another drink?" she suggested. "Sure," he agreed, following her back to their table. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of good music, better company, and a growing certainty that something important was happening between them. By the time they walked back to the inn, the night air crisp around them, Daniel knew he was in trouble. 4 days ago, he'd been about to marry another woman. Now he couldn't imagine returning to that life. At the door to his suite, they paused. "I had a great time," Serena said softly. "So did I," he replied. He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, letting his fingers linger against her cheek. She leaned into his touch ever so slightly. "Daniel, a ton, I know," he said. "It's too soon. I'm still sorting through everything with Victoria, and you barely know me." "That's true," she agreed, "but also not the whole truth." "What's the whole truth?" he asked, his voice low. "That I haven't felt this way about someone in a very long time." She met his eyes directly. "And it scares me a little." "Me too," he admitted. She stood on tiptoe and pressed a gentle kiss to his lips, so brief he might have imagined it. "Good night, Daniel," she whispered. "Good night, Serena," he replied, watching as she walked away. Inside his room, Daniel touched his lips, the ghost of her kiss still lingering. He was falling for her, falling hard and fast, and tomorrow at the wedding he would see her again, but as he prepared for bed, his phone, which he'd left in the drawer all day, lit up with a new message alert. Curious, he picked it up. It was from Victoria. "I've given you enough time to sulk. I'm coming to find you. Your assistant finally broke and told me where you are. We need to talk. I'll be there tomorrow." Daniel stared at the message, his stomach dropping. Victoria was coming here, to Millfield, to his sanctuary. And just like that, his past was about to collide with his future. Daniel barely slept that night. Victoria's message played over and over in his mind. How had his assistant known where he was? He hadn't told anyone specific details, just that he needed space. Then he remembered his credit card, of course. The card would have shown charges in Millfield. By morning, he still hadn't decided what to do. Part of him wanted to leave before Victoria arrived, to avoid the confrontation entirely. But that would mean leaving Serena without explanation, and the thought of hurting her was unbearable. He arrived at breakfast earlier than usual, hoping to catch Serena before the wedding preparations consumed her day. She was arranging fresh flowers on the buffet table when he entered, and her face lit up when she saw him. "Good morning," she said brightly. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," he admitted. "Can we talk for a minute?" Concern flickered across her face. "Of course. Let's go to my office." She led him to a small room off the main entrance, decorated simply but tastefully. Family photos lined the shelves, including several of an older woman who must have been her grandmother. "What's wrong?" Serena asked as soon as the door closed behind them. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "Victoria is coming to Millfield. Today." "Victoria, your ex-fiancée?" Serena's expression was unreadable. "Yes, she texted last night. Apparently my assistant told her where I was." "I see." Serena's voice was calm, but Daniel could sense her withdrawal. "I suppose you two have things to discuss." "Serena, it's not like that. She left me at the altar, remember? I have nothing to say to her." "Then why do you look so conflicted?" she asked quietly. Daniel sighed. "Because I'm afraid of what she'll say, what she'll do. Victoria can be dramatic. And this place, these past few days with you, It's been special. I don't want her to ruin it. Serena's expression softened. I understand, but you can't hide from your past forever, Daniel. I know, he agreed, but I don't have to let it dictate my future either. She smiled slightly at that. No, you don't. She glanced at her watch. I need to finish setting up for the wedding. It starts at 2. Will you still be my date? He asked, suddenly unsure. I was never officially your date, she reminded him with a teasing smile. I'm working the event, remember? Right, he said, feeling foolish. Of course. But, she added softly, I'd be happy to save a dance for you at the reception. Relief washed over him. I'd like that. Daniel, she said hesitantly, whatever happens with Victoria today, just be honest. With her, with yourself, and with me. I will, he promised. The wedding setup kept Serena busy all morning. Daniel wandered the grounds of the inn, trying to imagine what he would say to Victoria when she arrived. By noon, there was still no sign of her, and he began to wonder if she had changed her mind. He returned to his suite to change for the wedding. As he knotted his tie, one of the few dress items he'd purchased in town, he heard a knock at the door. His heart raced, thinking it might be Victoria, but when he opened it, it was Jake. Hey, Jake said, taking in Daniel's surprised expression. Serena mentioned you might need some moral support today. Thought I'd check in. Daniel was touched by the gesture. Thanks, come in. Jake entered the suite, hands in his pockets. Nice place. Serena did a good job with the renovation. She's good at what she does, Daniel agreed. Yeah, she is. Jake studied him for a moment. So the ex is coming to town, apparently. And how do you feel about that? Daniel considered the question. A week ago I was going to marry her. Now the thought of seeing her makes me, I don't know, angry, confused. And Serena? Jake asked bluntly. How do you feel about her? That's complicated, Daniel replied. Doesn't have to be, Jake countered. Either you care about her or you don't. I do, Daniel said without hesitation. More than I thought possible after knowing someone for such a short time. Jake nodded, seemingly satisfied. Good, because if you hurt her, you'll have the entire town of Millfield to answer to, and trust me, that's not a fight you want. I believe you, Daniel said with a small smile, but I have no intention of hurting her. Intentions are fine, but actions matter more. Jake headed for the door. The wedding's about to start. I'm catering the reception, so I need to get back. Just wanted to make sure your head was on straight. After Jake left, Daniel finished getting ready. Through the window, he could see the wedding set up by the lake, white chairs arranged in a semicircle, the arbor Serena had mentioned now decorated with autumn flowers and leaves. Guests were already gathering, the women in colorful dresses, the men in suits and ties. He joined them, finding a seat toward the back. The ceremony was simple but beautiful. The bride, Emily, walked down the aisle to a string quartet playing softly. Her father gave her away with tears in his eyes. The officiant, a family friend, spoke of love and commitment, of weathering storms together and celebrating joys. Daniel found himself watching Serena more than the ceremony. She stood discreetly, to one side, making sure everything ran smoothly. Even in her professional capacity, she was fully present, her face reflecting the joy of the moment. After the vows were exchanged and the newlyweds walked back up the aisle amid cheers and applause, the guests moved to the tent set up for the reception. Tables were arranged around a small dance floor, each decorated with autumn-themed centerpieces. Daniel spotted Serena directing the catering staff and made his way toward her. She looked beautiful in a simple burgundy dress, her hair swept up in an elegant knot. Everything looks perfect, he told her. Thank you, she replied with a smile. It all came together nicely. You work miracles, he said sincerely. Her cheeks colored slightly. Hardly a miracle, just careful planning and a bit of luck with the weather. Any sign of... Daniel let the question trail off. Victoria? No, Serena replied, but the day is young. The reception was in full swing, the band playing, guests dancing, when Daniel felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned, expecting to see Serena. but instead found himself face to face with Victoria. She was as beautiful as ever in a designer dress that probably cost more than most of the wedding guests' monthly salaries. Her blonde hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. But Daniel noticed something he hadn't before. A calculation in her eyes, a hardness behind the beauty. "Daniel," she said, her voice carrying just the right note of emotion. "Finally. Do you have any idea how difficult it was to find this place?" "Victoria," he replied, keeping his voice neutral. "I'm surprised you made the effort." She glanced around, taking in the rustic reception with a barely concealed look of disdain. "Can we talk somewhere private? This isn't really the place for the conversation we need to have." Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "The garden is quiet. We can talk there." He led her away from the reception, acutely aware of the curious glances, following them. He caught Serena's eye briefly as they left. Her expression was composed, but he could see the worry she was trying to hide. In the garden, Victoria wasted no time. "Daniel, I made a mistake. A terrible, awful mistake." "Which one?" he asked coldly. "Leaving me at the altar or coming here?" Her perfect features registered shock at his tone. "I panicked, okay? The wedding, the expectations, all of it. It was overwhelming. But I've had time to think, and I know now what I really want. You. Us." "There is no us anymore, Victoria," Daniel said firmly. "You made sure of that when you sent that text." "One moment of weakness shouldn't erase 5 years together," she argued, reaching for his hand. "We can start over. Plan a smaller wedding, just family. Or elope, if that's what you want." Daniel pulled his hand away. "What I want is for you to leave." Anger flashed in her eyes, quickly replaced by calculation. "Is this about that woman, the innkeeper? Daniel, be serious. She's a small-town nobody. What could she possibly offer you that I can't?" "Authenticity," he replied without hesitation. "Kindness, a genuine connection that isn't based on what I can give her or how I can advance her social standing." Victoria laughed, the sound harsh in the peaceful garden. "Oh, Daniel, you're so naive. She wants something from you just like everyone else. She just hasn't shown her hand yet." "You're wrong," he said, shaking his head. "And the fact that you think that way says more about you than it does about her." "Fine," Victoria snapped, dropping the pretense of reconciliation. "Play your little small-town fantasy if you must, but remember what's waiting for you in New York. Your family, your company, your real life. This," she gestured around dismissively, "this is just an escape. It's not real." "Maybe my life in New York was the fantasy," Daniel countered. "A persona I created because it was expected of me." Victoria studied him, her expression cold. "You've changed." "I hope so," he replied sincerely. She adjusted her designer handbag on her shoulder, her posture shifting to business-like efficiency. "You should know that your absence has been noticed. The board is getting nervous. Your father can only cover for you for so long." "Is that a threat?" Daniel asked, raising an eyebrow. "A reality check," she corrected. "While you've been playing house in this quaint little town, the real world has continued without you. The Thompson deal is on the verge of collapse. The Bryant property has development issues that only you can solve. And the charity gala next week, those things will sort themselves out," Daniel interrupted. "Or they won't. Either way, I'm not rushing back because you think I should." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "You'd risk everything you've built for what? A woman you've known for less than a week." "For myself," Daniel corrected. "For the chance to figure out who I am when I'm not being who everyone expects me to be." Victoria stared at him for a long moment, then shook her head. "I don't even recognize you anymore." "Maybe you never really knew me," he suggested quietly. She turned to leave, then paused. "She knows who you are, doesn't she? The real you, Daniel Kensington, CEO of Kensington Developments, one of the wealthiest men in New York." Daniel hesitated. "I haven't hidden who I am, but we haven't discussed specifics of my work." A slow, calculated smile spread across Victoria's face. "Oh, this is delicious. She has no idea. Your little innkeeper thinks you're just a regular guy who got his heart broken." Victoria laughed. "When she finds out the truth, when she realizes who you really are, do you think she'll still look at you the same way?" Or will those kind eyes of hers start calculating what you're worth? Serena isn't like that, Daniel insisted, but a seed of doubt had been planted. Everyone has a price, Daniel, Victoria said, her voice almost gentle now. Even small town. Innkeepers with kind eyes and warm smiles. With that parting shot, she walked away, her heels clicking on the garden path, her designer dress out of place among the simple beauty of Serena's garden. Daniel stood alone, Victoria's words echoing in his mind. Was she right? Would Serena see him differently when she knew the whole truth? The thought was unbearable. He made his way back to the reception, searching for Serena among the guests. He spotted her near the dance floor, deep in conversation, with the mother of the bride. She looked up as he approached, a question in her eyes. "Everything okay?" she asked when he reached her. "She's gone," he replied. "Back to New York, I hope." Serena nodded, studying his face. "And you? Are you okay?" "I'm not sure," he admitted. "Can we talk later, after the reception?" "Of course," she agreed. "I'll come find you when things wind down." The band started playing a slow song, and Daniel found himself reaching for her hand. "Dance with me," he asked, needing to hold her, to ground himself in the connection he felt with her. She hesitated only briefly before placing her hand in his. "One dance," she agreed with a smile. "I am working after all." On the dance floor, Daniel pulled her close, breathing in the light floral scent of her perfume. They moved together as if they'd been dancing for years, her body fitting perfectly against his. "She seemed beautiful," Serena said softly, breaking the comfortable silence between them. "She is," Daniel agreed. "On the outside." "And on the inside," he sighed. "I'm not sure I ever really knew. Maybe I saw what I wanted to see." "That's easy to do," Serena said, her cheek resting against his chest as they swayed to the music. "We all have blind spots when it comes to the people we care about." "Do I have blind spots about you?" he asked, the question slipping out before he could stop it. She looked up at him, her eyes searching his. "What do you mean?" "Nothing," he replied quickly. "Forget I asked." Serena studied him for a moment longer, then rested her head against his chest again. "We all have layers, Daniel. Parts of ourselves we show the world, parts we keep hidden. Getting to know someone means peeling back those layers, one by one." "And if you don't like what you find?" he asked, thinking of Victoria's warning. "Then, at least you know the truth," she replied simply. "That's always better than a beautiful lie." The song ended and Serena stepped back. "I need to check on the cake," she said. "We'll talk later, okay?" "I'll be here," he promised. As she walked away, Daniel felt the weight of his unshared truth. He needed to tell her everything, who he really was, the life he'd left behind, the complexities that came with the Kensington name. But Victoria's words haunted him. Would knowing change how Serena saw him? The reception continued around him, the joy of the newlyweds and their families, a stark contrast to the turmoil in his heart. He chatted with guests, accepted a slice of cake, clapped as the bride and groom departed amid a shower of autumn leaves instead of rice. As the party wound down and the last guests drifted away, Daniel helped the staff stack chairs and clear tables. It wasn't the kind of work he normally did, but there was something satisfying about the simple physical labor. "You don't have to do that," Serena said, appearing beside him with a tired smile. "You're a guest, not staff." "I don't mind," he replied. "It feels good to be useful." She studied him for a moment. "You're full of surprises, Daniel. Most men in designer watches don't volunteer for cleanup duty." His hand went automatically to his wrist, where his Patek Philippe gleamed in the late afternoon sun. "About that," he began, but Serena shook her head. "Later," she said, "when we're both less tired and I'm not thinking about a dozen things that still need to be done." "Let me help," he offered. "Then we can talk." Together they finished the cleanup, working side by side in comfortable silence. By the time the last rental van pulled away and the grounds were restored to their usual peaceful state, the sun was setting over the lake. "Walk with me," Serena suggested, gesturing toward the lakeshore path. They strolled together as the sky turned from gold to pink to purple. Daniel searched for the right words, the right way to tell her the truth without changing what was growing between them. Victoria said something that's been bothering me, he finally admitted. Oh? Serena's tone was carefully neutral. She said that when you find out who I really am, you'll see me differently. Serena stopped walking and turned to face him. And who are you really, Daniel? He took a deep breath. My full name is Daniel Kensington. I'm the CEO of Kensington Developments. We're one of the largest real estate development companies in New York. I know, she said simply. Daniel stared at her, stunned. You know? She nodded. I recognized your name when you checked in. The Kensington name is pretty hard to miss, even in Millfield. Your company tried to buy lakefront property here a few years ago for a resort development. I didn't know that. Daniel said, genuinely surprised. The deal fell through, Serena continued. The town council voted against it. They were afraid it would change the character of Millfield. And you never said anything, Daniel said, still processing the fact that she had known all along. It didn't seem important, she replied with a shrug. You clearly wanted privacy. Who was I to intrude? But my company tried to change your town. Aren't you angry about that? Serena considered the question. The company, maybe. But you? No, you're not just your company. Daniel, just like I'm not just the inn. Relief washed over him. So Victoria was wrong. Knowing who I am doesn't change how you see me. I've always seen you, Serena said softly, from that first night when you showed up soaking wet on my doorstep. Money doesn't make a person, Daniel. Actions do. He reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. I've been thinking about staying longer, he admitted. Beyond the week I booked. Have you? Her voice was carefully neutral, but her eyes betrayed her hope. There are things in New York I need to deal with, he continued. Responsibilities I can't ignore forever. But I'm not ready to leave this, to leave you. What are you saying, Daniel? I'm saying that for the first time in my life, I feel like myself when I'm with you. Not Daniel Kensington, CEO, or Daniel Kensington, eligible bachelor. Just Daniel. And I don't want to lose that. Serena squeezed his hand. You don't have to. The inn has excellent Wi-Fi, you know. You could work remotely for a while. You wouldn't mind having me underfoot? He asked, hope rising in his chest. I think I could get used to it, she replied with a smile. Daniel pulled her closer, his hands moving to her waist. There's still so much you don't know about me, he warned, and so much I don't know about you. That's the fun part, she whispered, her arms circling his neck, discovering each other one day at a time. When he kissed her, it felt like coming home, a home he didn't know he was searching for until he found it. Her lips were soft under her body warm and real in his arms. This wasn't the calculated passion he'd shared with Victoria, always with an undercurrent of performance. This was genuine, honest, true. They broke apart slowly, both a little breathless. I've wanted to do that for days, Daniel admitted, resting his forehead against hers. What took you so long, she teased, her eyes sparkling in the fading light. I was waiting for the right moment, he replied, for clarity. And do you have clarity now, she asked, suddenly serious. I'm getting there, he said honestly. There's still a lot to figure out. My life in New York, the company, what I really want for my future. But one thing is clear. What's that? You, he said simply. You're the clearest thing in my life right now, Serena. The one thing that makes perfect sense. She smiled, the kind of smile that reached her eyes and warmed her whole face. I feel the same way, and that scares me a little. Why? Because you have a whole life waiting for you in New York. Important work, family, responsibilities, and I have the inn, this town, my life here. We'll figure it out, Daniel promised, though he had no idea how. One step at a time. As they walked back to the inn, hand in hand, the stars began to appear above them. Daniel felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years, maybe ever. Whatever challenges lay ahead, and there would be many, at least he wouldn't face them alone. The next morning, Daniel woke early. For the first time since arriving in Millfield, he turned his phone on and left it on. There were more messages waiting, but among the dozens from Victoria, his parents, and various business associates, one stood out, an email from Marcus with the subject line, Urgent Board Meeting Called. Daniel opened it with a sense of dread. Daniel, hope. You're doing well wherever you are. Things here have taken a turn. Your father tried to cover for your absence, but Victoria has been talking to board members. She's convinced several of them that your mental state after the wedding debacle makes you unfit to lead the company right now. They've called an emergency board meeting for Friday to discuss a temporary leadership change. I know you needed space, but if you want to keep your position, you need to be at that meeting. It's scheduled for 10 a.m. at the main office. Call me when you get this. Marcus Daniel read the email twice, anger building with each word. Victoria was trying to push him out of his own company, the company his grandfather had founded, that his father had built, that he had expanded. All because he had refused to take her back. He dressed quickly and went in search of Serena. He found her in the kitchen, preparing breakfast for the guests. "Morning," she said brightly, then frowned when she saw his expression. "What's wrong?" "I need to go back to New York," he said, without preamble. "There's an emergency at my company. Victoria is trying to have me removed as CEO." Serena set down the bowl she was mixing. "Can she do that?" "With enough board votes, yes. She's been working them behind my back, telling them, I'm unstable after the wedding." He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "I have to be there for the meeting on Friday." "Of course you do," Serena agreed immediately. "Your company is important to you." "That's not just about the company," Daniel explained. "It's about what Victoria is doing. She's trying to take away the one thing she thinks I value most because I wouldn't take her back." "And do you?" Serena asked. "Value the company most?" Daniel considered the question. A week ago, the answer would have been an automatic yes. Now he wasn't so sure. "It's complicated," he said finally. "The company is my heritage, my family's legacy. I've poured my life into it, but is it what I value most? No, not anymore." Serena smiled slightly at that. "When will you leave?" "Today," he replied. "I need time to prepare, to talk to Marcus and my father, to line up support before the meeting." "Understand," she said, though disappointment flickered in her eyes. Will you come back? After?" The question hung between them, laden with meaning. Daniel closed the distance between them, taking her hands in his. "Yes," he said firmly. "Whatever happens with the company, I'm coming back. To you." Relief washed over her face. "Good, because I'd hate to have to come to New York to find you." "Would you?" he asked, surprised. "Come to New York, I mean." "For you?" she smiled. "I might be persuaded. Though I hear the people there are terribly sophisticated, I might be out of place." "You would outshine every socialite and corporate shark in the city," Daniel said honestly. "But I'd rather bring you there on your terms, not because you're chasing after me." "Then don't make me chase you," she replied simply. "Come back when you're done." "I will," he promised, sealing the vow with a kiss. 2 hours later, his bag was packed and his car was loaded. Serena stood with him in the driveway, both reluctant to say goodbye. "Call me when you get there," she said, "so I know you arrived. Safely." "I will," he promised, "and I'll call every day until I'm back." "You'd better," she warned with a smile. He kissed her once more, trying to memorize the feel of her, the scent of her, the way she fit perfectly in his arms. "I won't be gone long," he said. "A week at most." "I'll be here," she assured him. The inn isn't going anywhere, neither am I. As Daniel drove away, watching Serena grow smaller in his rearview mirror, he felt a mix of determination and regret. Regret at leaving this place that had become a sanctuary, this woman who had helped him find himself again. But determination, too, to handle the crisis in New York and return to Millfield, to Serena, to the life he was beginning to envision for himself. The drive to New York gave him time to think, to plan. By the time he reached the city limits, he knew exactly what he needed to do. First, secure his position at the company, then make arrangements for a more flexible working situation. And finally, return to Millfield with a clear proposal for how they could build a future together, one that honored both their worlds. What he didn't know, couldn't know, was that Victoria had one more card to play, one that would test everything. He and Serena had built in their short time together. New York City welcomed Daniel back with its familiar chaos, honking horns, crowded sidewalks, and the relentless energy that never seemed to fade. After the peaceful quiet of Millfield, the city felt overwhelming. His penthouse apartment was exactly as he'd left it, still bearing traces of the life he'd planned with Victoria, her magazines on the coffee table, her favorite wine in the refrigerator.